Throughout this month, VPR and Vermont PBS have been teaming up for a series of debates broadcast live on both the radio and on TV. We've been hearing from candidates for statewide and federal office in an effort to help you make informed choices when you go out to vote on November 6th. Today's final debate is with the two candidates for U.S. Senate joining us here today. Incumbent Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Burlington, who's seeking a third term, and Republican challenger Lawrence Zupan, a real estate broker from Manchester. It's nice to have both of you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Here's the format we're using throughout the campaign 2018 debates. In the first segment, I will ask common questions of both of you. In the second segment, you'll have an opportunity to ask each other questions with a brief follow-up question. Then we're going to turn to a series of questions submitted by Vermonters. And if we have time, which I hope we will have a lightning round of questions with some very brief answers. And we will conclude our program with a 1-minute closing statement from each of the candidates. And this will go very fast, so let's get right into the questions. Last week, 14 explosive devices were sent through the mail to people associated with the Democratic Party. The man who's been arrested is a fervent Trump supporter who has used social media to blast politicians he disagrees with. A little over a year ago, House Majority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana and 3 others were shot at a congressional baseball practice by a left-wing activist. Donald Trump has praised people who body slam journalists and assault opponents. The man accused of shooting 11 people in a synagogue on Saturday had raged online about immigration and the resettlement of refugees, in addition to anti-Semitic rants. Political rhetoric can lead to actual physical violence, and while we may not be able to directly tie any one person's divisive language to someone with murderous intentions, it's tough to ignore how divisive the current dialogue is. What can you do in Congress to ramp down the partisan rhetoric and pour water on partisan flames that have led us to this fever pitch? Lawrence Zupan?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jane, and my heart goes out to all those who have suffered from these heinous acts, which don't represent the best of America, that's for sure. To answer your question, what I would do, first of all, is I see myself as a unifier and a healer. Why? Because my approach is to solve problems with real-life solutions. And I'm not into partisan attacks. In fact, I prefer to find the best solutions, whichever party might bring them. For example, I would be quick to praise Barack Obama, though I will admit I didn't vote for him, when he came up with the U.S. Digital Service, which was a wonderful idea, which President Trump also doubled down on. So wherever the good ideas come from is where we have to employ them for the benefit of Vermonters and for the benefit of America. It's not about promoting oneself and one's ideas for the sake of self-glorification or for the sake of promoting one's next reach for office. It's for the sake of America. You must remember that if you are sent to Vermont, to D.C. as a senator for Vermont, that you have a solemn oath and an obligation to serve the people who sent you there.
Lawrence Zupan, in an earlier interview with me, though, this campaign season, you suggested that your opponent sitting across the table, Bernie Sanders, doesn't love America.
That's not what I said.
You said he's aligned with political movements that have murdered millions. Do you consider that to be inflammatory language? What
I said was, I asked the senator to repeat a simple phrase. And then when you pursued it, by asking me, do I imply that the senator doesn't love America? I said, I'm implying that he loves socialism more than America because that's what he keeps promoting.
So do you think that that's inflammatory language?
No, I don't. I think it reflects the fact that the senator has spent the last 2 to 4 years promoting socialism above basic American principles, against the principles that have made America the role model and the envy of the world. And I didn't say that he didn't love America. I asked him to repeat this phrase, I love America. I have always loved America, and I always will love America, which is a phrase I'm proud to say.
Bernie Sanders, what would you do to tamp down inflammatory language, partisan bickering, things that can actually lead to, as we've seen, real violence?
Yes. I disagree with Donald Trump on virtually everything. On his economic policies, on his healthcare policies, on his immigration policies, on his opposition to a woman's right to choose. But what I dislike about him most, Jane, is for cheap political gain, he is trying to divide us up. And I think the evidence is quite clear that Donald Trump is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, and a religious bigot. So when you have a president of the United States moving the country in that direction, when, as you indicated, he says out in Montana to a congressman who body slammed a journalist, hey, he's my kind of guy. When you have a president who, during his rallies running for president, said he would provide legal fees for people who may have beaten up somebody. When you have a president who says to the media, which is the essence of what a free society is about, you, Jane, by the way, are an enemy of the people. And you have these large rallies, and people are pointing their fingers and screaming at CNN and other news journals. I think this president has got to calm it down and tell the American people that a free press is what we are about, that we are one people, and not try to divide us up. Now, having said that, having said that, Trump had millions of votes, Hillary Clinton had millions of votes, I have millions of votes. And I'm not going to sit here and blame Trump because some sick person did something, or if Hillary Clinton or my candidate.
Well, good. Let me ask you about that, because, you know, when you were running for president, some of your supporters who got the nickname Bernie Bros were online. The LA Times described them this way: online trolls who attack journalists, politicians, and fellow voters they perceive to be pro-Clinton with misogynistic, often vulgar attacks. You denounced them.
Yes.
But in retrospect, what would you do? I mean, it goes
first of all, not only did we denounce them, I'm not so sure that they were our supporters. I mean, there's a lot of ugly things that are going on, whether it was Russian trolls or whether it was others who try to pretend to be Bernie Sanders supporters. But I absolutely denounce all forms of violence and all kinds of ugly statements against candidates.
May I have a moment?
Let's move on. You're going to have a chance to talk to each other in the second round, and if you'd like to bring it up there, that's a good place, because we want to make sure we get a lot of topics.
Well,
so I am going to move.
Senator Sanders seems to think that Donald Trump is sitting here. It's actually Lawrence Zupan.
Lawrence Zupan, I'm going to move on to the second topic.
Actually, I do know that, Mr. Zupan.
Thank you.
In the past 2 years, there's been a lot of talk about immigration, from finding a solution to the Dreamers, children who were brought here to this country by their parents or adults, to building a wall to prevent people from crossing our southern border. Right now, there's a lot of focus on a group of people who have fled from Central America and are currently in Mexico walking towards the U.S. border. This group of people, by the way, will be nowhere near the U.S. border by Election Day, but nonetheless, this is fuel for a lot of conversation about immigration. President Trump has said he may send as many as 1,000 troops to defend the border. Everyone agrees something has to be done on immigration. What plan do you think will get the bipartisan support it's going to need in order to address problems with the immigration system in this country? Bernie Sanders?
Well, number one, the last poll that I saw on this issue, Jane, had 80% of the American people supporting a legal status and legal protection for the young people in the DACA program, 1.8 million people. And I strongly support that. These are people, young people who came to this country at a very, very young age. Many of them are in school, they're working, some of them are in the military. So we have to provide legal status to the DACA people. We have about 10 million undocumented people in this country. Overwhelming majority of the people are honest, hardworking people. I believe we have got to provide, and I voted for, comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And I resent very much, look, immigration is a difficult issue and people can have honest disagreements about it. But to demonize immigrants is, again, not what this country is about, and that is what Trump does in trying to divide us up.
So in order, though, to have something that works better, I mean, everybody on all sides of the political spectrum agrees something has to be done, but it doesn't ever seem to go forward. So I mean, how would you make that work?
Well, we had bipartisan support in the Senate for immigration reform, just not enough votes. And I would hope very much that the Congress listens to the American people. What the American people want is not only to protect the young people in DACA, they do want comprehensive immigration reform. If you threw out all of the undocumented workers in agriculture today, some 2 million people, food prices would be off the charts, and you'd have a collapse in agriculture in America.
Lawrence Zupan, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I must make a clear demarcation between legal immigration and illegal immigration. People from one side of the political divide seem to enjoy muddying that water. Legal immigration is where people are allowed into the country based on the respect for the laws of our land, which all citizens are called upon to respect. Illegal immigration is where people crash our borders and wind up living off a welfare system that is paid for by the taxpayers and the citizens of the United States of America. So we have to make a clear distinction. My grandparents were legal immigrants. In my youth, I helped somebody obtain a legal green card, and I knew what a rigorous process it was, but it was legal and correct, and it was accomplished. What do you say to people who are just allowed to come in here and take advantage of our welfare system when other people have been following all the rules to come in here? Now, addressing the immediate problem. Senator Sanders a moment ago seemed to talk about Russian trolls as being the people who sponsored the Bernie Bros. I don't know where the truth is.
Actually, I didn't say that.
Okay.
Wait, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, because the specific question I'm asking you is what plan would work? You know, it is legal to declare asylum. It is legal to enter the United States and ask for asylum. So, you know, we're talking here about a couple different things.
We're talking about 7,000 people in an organized system. I'm asking who's behind that, first of all, and what is the government of the United States supposed to do when there's an organized invasion of the country's borders?
So what would you do? If you're in Congress, what's your plan for immigration?
Well, first of all, I would make a distinction between those who are already here illegally and have settled into life, and a distinction between those and those who want to use that as an example to crash the borders. So first I would secure the border so that we could stanch the flow of blood, so to speak. And then I would deal with the people who are here in a humane way, which would include a certain adjustment period, after which time they would be invited to go out of the country and come back and apply for citizenship.
Okay. Let's talk about another topic here. I want to talk about climate change. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change recently released a report that suggested that some of the most dire consequences of climate change could come sooner than we expected, as early as 2040. Lawrence Zupan, do you believe that climate is changing at a rapid pace that is primarily caused by human activity?
You know, the wonderful thing is that as Mr. Kurzweil, the head of Google Engineering, has made clear, if the United States government would just stop stifling innovation, never mind having 35% renewables by 2050, which has seemed to be an acceptable goal. We could have 90 to 100% renewables by 2030. What the US government has to do is stop stifling innovation by subsidizing industries that are not able to carry their own weight. We are living in a digital age, a golden age of tremendous growth and opportunity. While we're sitting here right now, there are breakthroughs in plasma fusion, in geothermal, in next generation solar, which will render this whole dialogue an antiquity very soon if we can stop telling people by force of government what they have to accept and how much they have to pay other people to do what they could be doing anyway.
Do you agree, though, that climate change at this rapid pace right now is primarily caused by human activity?
I agree that that'll become an academic point very soon.
Right, but do you believe it? That's the question.
It's not let me ask you a question. What difference does it make what I believe if my solutions will solve the very problem that the climate
More to make it
the people who believe in climate change being anthropomorphically caused by humans would have the same goals as me. I have the same goals. I have a pink pair of lungs that breathe air. I don't want pollution. I don't want excess carbon. I want to encourage all of the renewable sources that can replace the 19th century technology of petroleum and fossil fuel. And I believe it will happen.
Safe to say you don't support a carbon tax then, a federal carbon tax?
Well, a carbon tax, is the most regressive form of tax because the people who earn $30,000 to $50,000 or less, who have to drive to work every day and have to heat their homes to pay an extra $1 a gallon, why do we want to punish those people? Is it for some ideological cause or to prove a point to prove some kind of a point? I think it's a terrible mistake. Furthermore, it wouldn't even help the problem it purports to help in this small state to bilk the drivers of Vermont out of more money just to drive to work and to heat their homes.
Well, let's stop there. Senator Sanders, I know you support a federal carbon tax. In fact, you introduced one in 2013.
I introduced comprehensive energy reform, which included
a carbon tax. So, to the point that Lawrence Zupan was just making, how would you ensure that it's not regressive, hurting the most vulnerable people who can least afford the tax side?
I mean, what Mr. Zupan is saying is what many of my Republican colleagues are saying.